Coming up today on David versus Goliath.
Just because you give them their artwork doesn't mean it's going to sell. You have to be present.
From a napkin sketch to a multi-million-dollar business, it can happen for you too.
Welcome to today's episode of David versus Goliath, a podcast dedicated to helping small businesses leverage technology to not only help them compete against their large competitors, but win. Your host is currently the CEO of Anthem Business Software, a three-time Inc. 500 recipient, and a serial entrepreneur with a passion to help small businesses everywhere find, serve, and keep more customers profitably. Please join me in welcoming your host, Adam DeGraide.
Hey everyone, it's Adam DeGraide with another fantastic edition of the David versus Goliath podcast. As you can tell, I'm not in the studio. I'm actually working remote. I've been doing a lot of traveling this summer, and so I'm going to do a few episodes on the road. So I'm hanging out here in beautiful Newport Beach, California, and today we're going to talk to Pete Tillack. That's right. I think I'm saying his name right. Pete Tillack. And he's actually an artist that I found out about when I was visiting Napa in California. Ended up buying a piece of his art, and I love interviewing creatives. It should be fantastic. So big news today. We have a brand new corporate sponsor who's joining Anthem Software as one of our key sponsors of the podcast. And this company is called AutomateMySocial.com. That's right, AutomateMySocial.com. And the whole premise behind the business, we started using it ourselves at Anthem, and we also started using this software at David versus Goliath podcast. It automates 90% of your social media so you never have to think about it again. It's unbelievable how powerful this software really is. You know, most small businesses spend thousands of dollars a month trying to manage, either hiring people to manage their social media or hiring an agency to manage their social media. This software literally will take and generate content for you in like seconds and then give you the ability to distribute it across all of your channels. It's unbelievable. Check it out. There will be a DVG code that's coming for this. I don't have it right now for a discount, but right now they are offering a discount to anybody who visits AutomateMySocial.com. Prices are typically $250 per business, but if you sign up today, you can get a discount of up to 20% off that at AutomateMySocial.com. Well, check it out. Don't forget to visit us online at davidvsgoliathpodcast.com. There you can subscribe to be on the podcast, and then subscribe to get actually information on the podcast, our newsletters, and apply to be on the podcast. Highly recommend you do that. Check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Plus, we got a store there with some hats, t-shirts, mugs, fun things like that. Well, I'm so excited to interview Pete. I don't want to spend any more time talking about anything other than his art and what it's like to be a creative in the business world. So, Pete, welcome to the David versus Goliath podcast.
How you doing, my friend?
It is so great to have you. For the watchers and the listeners, I learned about Pete because my wife and I were strolling through a gallery in Napa, California, just having a great time, and this piece just struck me. I'm going to put it up right now on my iPad, but my actual producer is going to put the real one up so people can see a higher quality. This is the picture right here. And I walked in, and you know, one of the things about my wife and I, Pete, that I think you'll appreciate is we love art, number one. We're creatives ourselves. And at the end of the day, when we see something we like, we have to have it. And when I saw that picture entitled "For All the Marbles," the thing that appealed to me was obviously the character of the lion, but what was really intriguing was the messaging behind it. And it was basically like, you know, if you want all the marbles, you can't just sit on the couch and let time burn. You got to get out and work. And I thought that was just so awesome. And as I started to look at some of your other pieces of art, I was really inspired. And so just so everyone understands, I'm a paying customer of Pete. Pete did not give me a piece of art to be on my show. I met Pete because I bought his art and I believe in what he's doing. And I begged him to come on the David versus Goliath podcast, because one of the things I love here at the David versus Goliath podcast, Pete, is we have businesses of all shapes and sizes. And so for the watchers and the listeners, your journey I was reading on the info form is fantastic. I don't want to spoil your thunder. Tell them a little bit about how Pete ended up where he is right now in that studio and where your journey began and how you got to where you are today.
That's not a short story. That's a long story, mate. My life has been a conversation in itself, and it's a good conversation. Started off not knowing, again, when you're a teenager, you don't know what you want to be. And in Australia, the life as an artist wasn't really a viable choice. I didn't know anybody who was. I didn't know anyone who really collected art, so I never even thought anything about. There's a creative streak in my family when I look back, but nobody did anything with it. And so I became the rudimentary electrician and did really well, loved it. Did my 4-year course and was about to open up a business. I was working 2 jobs at the time to create a big nest egg to create a business. So a nightclub at night, and I was working 7 days a week as an electrician. At 23, I thought I'd just go for a quick surf before I started the business. And in Australia, we go for a month or so for a quick surf. And so I would, it's a different lifestyle now I see it. It's great. But I ended up doing France, Spain, Portugal, and I just kept going. So I hadn't planned on it. So what I had on me was what I had on me. There was a lot of hurdles. Homesickness is a real thing. It's the lack of security and friends and family. I got over that. And once I got over that, my life opened up to so many adventures. I ended up filling 3 passports, would work where I needed to work when I needed to work. Really didn't have any plans. One of my favorite stories, it sounds funny because it sounds like I'm saying somebody else's story, but it was my life. I remember getting in touch with a mate from Australia who I knew was somewhere in the world. He ended up being in Canada, told me to meet him in California. That's how I ended up creating Roots here. He found me, and then we went through Mexico. We decided to surf through Mexico. And as we're driving through Mexico, he said, "Hey, you want to go to Costa Rica?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you know where it is?" No. It was all the way. I quickly figured out where it was. And this was prior cell phones and everything.
Yeah.
So
I love what I love about your story so far is that, man, life is an adventure, right? I mean, and you just let your heart carry you and your free spirit and your love for adventure. And man, I think people admire that. There's a lot of people in their lives, that are like that lion, right? They're sitting on the couch and they're staring out the window and they're wondering why all the marbles that they could have are spilled out on the floor. And the whole time is you just got to get off and get out and get going, right? I mean, you ended up in California. You ended up in California. That's where you are right now, right? Like your actual studio's in San Diego. Keep the story going. Yeah.
So I would just, when I'd go to a new country or a new place, I would change up things. The only thing I really kept was my backpack, 2 screwdrivers and a pair of pliers. Everything else would change depending on where it was. And I'd do whatever job it was to get to the next spot. When we got down into Costa Rica, I want to say it took us about 7 months or something like that. And you got to remember, we were with paper maps, as we drove down there.
My wife, by the way, Pete, loves paper maps. We just went on, and the reason why I'm not in my studio right now is we're on like an adventure like you have. We left on June 5th. We're not getting back till September 13th or whatever it is, back to our home in Florida. We've been to Montana and Wyoming and Idaho and Yellowstone and Lake Tahoe, and now we're in Newport Beach, California. We'll go up to Pebble Beach. And my wife is so funny. Before the trip, Pete, she ordered all of the maps. And now we have Google, but she loves it. And she sat there and we mapped out, okay, where are we going to fly? Where are we going to drive? And she just loved having that visual, those paper maps in front of her. So I digress. I apologize.
No. You don't digress at all. In fact, there's something lost with just seeing a small focus on life. Let me bring this around to, as you said, there's a story behind all my pieces, and this is how it goes. Why is there something nostalgic about those big paper maps? It's because you can see the amount of land that you're going. you can see all these hidden spots that you won't necessarily look at when you're on a Google Maps.
Yeah, you can't see it when you're on this because you're too focused on this small little screen in front of our faces that we're missing the big picture of the world around us. And that was her whole point. She's like, yeah, I could do it. She's like, but what's the fun in that? Let's see where we're going. And then we used it as an education tool for our kids that we homeschool. And so it was really cool for them to see where we're stopping, how we're going to stop, where we're going to go, why we're going to fly versus drive, and really give them that, that education at that young age and that wonder, right? The wonder of how big the map really is. And that was just a few states. I mean, the world is so huge and yet so small.
Well, yeah, we can get back onto that one as well. But with the Google Maps, you're actually putting in point A and point B. And you're forgetting about the rest of the alphabet in the middle there. And that's what our life was when we traveled. It's like, hey, here's where we want to go. What do you think? There's a right turn. I know it's got to go to the beach, or we hope it's going to go to the beach. And there's so many times, I tell a story because it's one of my favorite stories, and I'm sure I've embellished it over the times. But the essence of it was great. It's my mate and I flipped a coin, and I put a coin in a few of my pieces for that reason, because there was only two of us, and he told me we couldn't make a choice. We'd flip the coin, and therefore we would never argue, right? So we got to the end of one road in Guatemala, and, our Spanish, we're Australian, so we're not really open to a lot of languages down there back in the day. But so our Spanish was getting better. I used to read a book, one of the books, and try and learn Spanish as I was talking to people. And we got to the end, but everybody knows what peligroso crocodilia means, which is we've got the sign with the crocodile in the water. We get to the end of the road, and here's this swamp. And we're like, well, we're pretty sure what's in there, but we got to get across it to see the surf. So we pull out the coin. We flip the coin. I lose. So I'm about 25, full of strength and learning to use my brain, but not at this point. I'm like, if I can get across to this point, to that point, to that point, I should be able to get across to the beach. I did. I'm a pretty strong swimmer. That doesn't matter, right? That doesn't matter in that situation. I get across to the beach. I get there and there's no surf. So I'm like, oh, geez, And we were driving this big van that was a long wheelbase Dodge van, and it was jimmy rigged with the back of a truck top on the back of that, so you could actually stand up. It was held together pretty much with spit and duct tape. And as I'm walking along back to go across the swamp, and you got to remember, back down there, we respected where we were. Whenever we got out of the car, we'd put on long shirts, even no matter how hot it was, because that's what the locals wore, long pants. We wore what the locals wore. Therefore, we didn't stand out like a sore thumb, right? Sure. And we would respect their situation. Now, at that point in time, I had piercings. I had long hair. I got some tattoos, not really equivalent to that sort of a country at that point in time. And I'm in my board shorts, and I look up and I see this guy in a canoe with an older lady that were coming from a village that was on the beach. Now, it says a lot, because this was a dirt or sand-ridden beach with their lives on that, and here they are completely dressed clean, right? Still don't understand how that can be, but the respect that they had. I just ran, and with my broken Spanish, jumped in the canoe with an excuse me sort of a deal, and here he goes, starts paddling across the swamp, only to notice that he's only got one arm. Right?
Oh, no.
So the signs were correct. Here he is. And I'm in a pair of board shorts. And at that point in time, I was in a pretty good physique. And these guys are like completely dressed up. And so they're paddling this Australian guy across the swamp. And it's obvious we're the only ones there, because here's our truck standing out like a sore thumb on the other side.
Oh, my God.
We hit a sandbank in the middle without a word spoken. We both got out of the canoe and lifted it over without letting the lady get wet. Jumped back in the canoe, and he took me straight to my van. I took them out. Gracias. It was such a beautiful experience. And I'm right up to the van. I'm going, Brad, did you get the photos? He's snoring in the back seat.
He's sleeping the whole time.
He slept the whole time. So who got the adventure from the bad coin flip? I got the adventure for life,
Yeah, and that it's fascinating. We're going to need to take a break here soon, but we got a couple of minutes before we do that. So at what point did you realize, when you're on a surf, It's just a holiday, and you're just continuing going on that. When were you artistic before that, or did that come later in life?
I was always creative, but as I said, I didn't think anything of it. Then, you could just sing a couple of songs and play the guitar, but never thought you could be in a band, which I know you can relate to that sort of a situation in the music scene. So I was doing trade show booths for a company that did murals on the weekend. And they said to come along and help them, and I said, oh, yeah, I used to paint at school and so forth. And I started painting with them. And they actually asked me to stop because I was the mud guy, right? Because if you mix all the colors together, it turns brown. Yeah, right. And the guy who was running the deal turned to me and said, do you know anything about shadows, highlights, and tones? And I was like, oh, my logical mind clicked in. That's why they paint apples, because of the dimensions. Now, at that period of time, I didn't have a family. I didn't have any responsibilities. So all I did was focus. And a long story short, because it actually went for a bit of time there, I said, if I could sell a piece, I'll become an artist and I'll stay here. If not, I go back home. Either way, there's a sacrifice. I'm going to give something up to get something. So I'm going to miss my country, my beautiful beaches, because I do surf, my beautiful beaches, my family, but I'll have this life as an artist. Or I create this killer life and have okay surf and venture into something I actually enjoy as a job, but I know it's going to become my life.
That's awesome.
And it was another flip of the coin. And it's a cool story, but I got to cut it short. I know, because I can keep talking. As I say, my life's a conversation. But in a roundabout way, not the way that I planned, but sales started coming in, and it was not the way that I planned. In fact, it comes back to the business side of it, which was marketing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Pete, we're going to take a break from our corporate sponsor. We're going to play a message from our main corporate sponsor, Anthem Software, and possibly a new quick message from AutomateMySocial.com, which is also a new sponsor of the David versus Goliath podcast. Yeah, thank you. It's a lot of fun. And you're with Pete Tillack. Am I saying that right, Pete?
You are, my friend.
And Adam DeGraide, the host of David versus Goliath. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Anthem Business Software System is designed to specifically help small businesses just like yours find, serve, and keep more customers profitably. We do this by providing you with the most powerful software, automations, and marketing services to help your business compete and win in this ever-changing digital world. Take a short video tour at anthemsoftware.com.
Anthem Software. Every business has a song. Let our software sing yours.
And we're back with Pete and your handsome host, Adam. And we're talking about art, creativity. And Pete just said something fascinating, how he went and he put, almost like a fleece out there. I don't know if you know what the word fleece is. It's an Old Testament term where people would test God. They would leave a fleece out. And if certain things happened to this fleece, that would basically be their idea of how God is communicating to them, whether to do something or not. In your case, your life was flipping coins. And you got to the point where it's like, I'm either going to be an artist, stay here in the States, or I'm going to go back to my home and surf and beautiful beaches and try to figure out how to make a living there. And you had some success early on, more than you were kind of surprised yourself. People really liked what you were doing. And then you said something about marketing. But before we get into marketing, I do want to talk about some of the art that you actually do. And because I love the style. I think it's amazing. As a matter of fact, my producer right now is showing the watchers and listeners some of the pieces that you sent to us. So guys, just look at this stuff. It's amazing. Now, Pete, you and I can't see it right now because I'm not able to display it at the same time, but our watchers and our viewers are seeing your artwork. And when I walked in and I saw it, I was blown away. And I have the list of all the pieces that you sent here to me. I would love for you to pick one, and let's talk about that particular piece a little bit, about either A, what inspired you, or B, you do a lot of commission work as well too.
Yes.
So let's first start with a piece that you created because you wanted to. What would that piece be called?
Well, let's talk about the one that you have, All the Marbles. I paint a lot of the pieces, or all the pieces in art commissions come to me via a conversation like we're having right now, along with deep thought. And sometimes I'm on a track and then sort of veer off, and I'll have to make notes saying, hey, this could be a new piece, or this could do a new subject matter that I wanted to visit. My thoughts about life in all my travels. Well, let me jump back. I used to paint coastal scenes because that's all I knew. It was my calming of who my personality was now that I look back on it. And it wasn't until about 7-8 years ago where I had trouble supporting my family. I have a wife and daughter. And through a long show that I do that's a live show, high on coffee, high on stress, but not giving up, came this vision. And it started off as a self-portrait because when I was in my sister's place in Canada, I put a couch on the track in the field and took photos of it with me on it.
Interesting.
And then that was before I was even an artist or the painting artist. And I decided at this point in time I'd been looking for my voice, and I started painting this piece just out of frustration, completely off the cuff from what I was painting. And as I'm overly thinking it, stressed out, the story started to come. It was my self-portrait, but I ended up taking me out and realizing there was a lot of symbolism in it. And I can go further into that symbolism, but we're going to go back to All the Marbles. And so now I look at why we do things, and then I look at symbolism and bring them together into a piece. So for All the Marbles, it's the lion sitting on the couch looking out the window, and he's contemplating. Yeah. He has a very strong look to him, but he's a contemplation. Now, it's funny that we put these feelings towards animals that are wild, that have the personal traits that we hope we have, yet they don't look at us in those matters. They look at us like a piece of meat, right? So he's sitting there and he's contemplating things. If you look, he's got the goggles on his head. So you can sit back and you can contemplate where you want to go in life, because if you look, there's all papers flying around. Not every napkin sketch can make its way into fruition.
Yeah.
But sometimes you're going to have to take that adventurous leap, knowing you're going to lose the art of momentum if you don't move. And that adventurous leap will help you fill in the gaps of the things you don't know. Right? Now, as you look forward out that window and you start making those moves, the problem is if you don't take that move, you're going to become laziness, and procrastination is the enemy of time and discipline if you're going to go for all the marbles. Now, time is on the window, which is something that we all have, and we only have a certain amount of it. And on his leg, if you look, there's a little symbol there, right?
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, that's discipline. Sometimes I research what I think discipline could be, and it was actually the Chinese symbol for the chicken's foot, because the chicken stands on all the chicks, and it doesn't hurt them, but it brings them all in.
Interesting.
Right? So when I was looking for that, I found that online, and so many things there's a word for it, I can't think of it right now, but it came into a connection that I already had that didn't realize it was already there. And it was the chicken's foot, and right next to it was discipline and philosophy. And the philosophy was the trident. And it just happened to come up in these images next to each other. I'm like, oh my God, if I put those together, it looks like the tattoo I have on my leg. And that's where the tattoo is, the same as on the lion.
That's amazing.
Is on my leg.
You know what I love about this piece for me when I saw it is not only does it speak to me as an entrepreneur, and we have a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs that are watching this. And I think what you said is so profound. Not every idea you put on a napkin is going to come to fruition, but at some point, you have to get off the couch and try to put one in fruition. And it's funny that you mentioned a napkin. Some of the most successful business relationships that I've ever had and products that I've ever built have been sketched on napkins. I'll never forget it. One of my first business partners and I were having dinner in New Orleans, and we were trying to strike a deal for him to come on board and be a partner with me. And we took a napkin and we wrote out how we were going to go and present it to the partner that we wanted to have on board. And we actually literally brought the napkin. And that's how we presented it. And then when I started another company called Astonished Results, after I sold my first business, I walked into an insurance agency, had no idea what I was going to be selling. They had a whiteboard there, so it was a big napkin, Pete. And I went up to the board and I drew a circle, and I cast the vision for what Astonish was going to be. And he bought and signed the contract without any real presentation other than me drawing on a napkin. I went back to the company and my partners. I said, and this is what we're doing. We're going to do this. And, but it all does start, like you said, it's not just the contemplation of the idea. And so many entrepreneurs and people that have their own businesses or want to have their own businesses never do it. And they die with what's inside of them. And I love what you're doing because you're calling out people and you're saying, listen, in this particular piece alone, you can't just sit on the couch and be regal and have all these great ideas. Time is running out. You must have discipline in order for you to receive all the marbles, which is what you want out of your endeavor. And it's fascinating. It's one thing to create art that you come up with, Pete, for yourself, right? So I made a piano album and I had some string quartets and it was my music. I just recently made another album called, it's actually, you can look it up. It's adammusicproject.com. It's a hard rock album. I found some subject matter that I wanted to write songs about. It happened to be a video game and I did it. But it's a whole separate thing when you're creative, whether you're a photographer or you're an artist, to create your own art versus put that same passion into somebody else's vision and deliver that quality. And one of the pieces that I want to talk about really quickly that I loved, I believe it was a commissioned piece. Let me see if I can find it here. You tell me if this was a commissioned piece.
So that was based on a piece I already had, and then it became a commission piece actually for a bank, TBK in Texas.
In Dallas.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this or not, like the DVG chair has been on the episodes and it looks a lot like that. So when I was actually in the art gallery in Napa, they had this one displayed as well too. And I'm like, oh, that's almost my chair. And so I'm probably going to commission you. What I'd like to do is I'm actually going to do a portrait with my buddy Clay Cook, who's a great photographer, in my studio. And so I'm going to do an actual picture of it. And then I'd love to commission someone of your talent and skills to recreate it artistically. And so there's a lot of things like that. But for the watchers and listeners, how do you put the same passion in a pure commission project versus something that's birthing out of yourself? Because Clay was talking about it. He said it was a challenge to start, but then you start to realize you don't want to mail it in. You want to give them 110% too. What's your process in doing that?
Yeah, you said it right there, the challenge. I've done a piece. What's life without a challenge? If you're just flipping burgers, nothing against that, because that's what I've done in the past.
Me too.
But your brain will veer somewhere else. And so you're not really getting full satisfaction out of the job, which is not bad, because if that's what you do, you can live your life on the other side of it. But if you want to do something like this for a job, you want those challenges. Those challenges, whether it be creative or the other side of your mind, the logical or whatever it may be, is what keeps you going. Now, I'm nervous every time I start a piece, whether it's for somebody else or for myself. I like that. We're all scared. That's what holds a lot of people back is fear. We all have that. And this is how a piece starts. A new piece. Oh, fear is something. Let's build something around fear.
Yeah, totally.
Because we all have it. It's like being lonely, but in a room full of lonely people, all you have to do is turn and talk.
Yeah.
Right? But so it's funny, a piece of just what I do when I do a commission is I'll do it digitally to show what people are going to enjoy, if it's going to work for them, before I start painting it. Then I'll paint it flat on a canvas and use that as inspiration coming from one of my screens on the computer. And I just finished a piece for the couple who actually own all the marbles, the original. And they came to me.
That's not right. I got to get that from them.
I know. But they came to me with a napkin sketch. They came exactly that with a napkin sketch. That's and awesome. I've actually put napkin sketches and marbles in the back of their piece to connect with those. And which is another example, because the term napkin sketch we all use, but I hadn't had it in my vision until I was with another collector having dinner installing a piece. And the daughter works with a very prominent rock band. And it's Kiss. She works with Kiss, and she actually hooked us up, and it was insane. And she said they sit down There's 3 in the company, and a couple of them are actually my collectors, so shout out to them, and I appreciate their love. But they sit there and they sketch it out as a napkin sketch in the bars after the shows or whatever it may be, and that's how they come up with it. And we're sitting there having dinner, and they were talking about that because I was interested in how her business worked.
Yeah.
And when she said napkin sketches, I'm like, oh, that's it. That's what I was looking for in the piece.
That's great.
And so they're all stoked, because of what I discuss. I'd been looking for a connection. My work, I don't really sell my work, I connect it. And like you said, you connected with the piece. I had looked for years to have that happen for me, and it just came through the lowest part of my life, or one of the lowest parts. And my life could have gone further down. There's always a lower part. But
there's always, because the lowest point is death. So it can and death could be the highest part too.
I have to beg to say that death could be the easy way out for a lot of people. It's actually living with the frustrations could be one of the most torturous things.
Yeah, totally.
And that's one of the things. So, I was stressed, but I wasn't giving up. And that's how this work came about. So I now put my stories on there and think about why we do things and move forward on those sort of pieces. And that's when I realized, oh my God, we all are very similar and have this connection.
From a napkin sketch to a multi-million-dollar business, it can happen for you too. Because if you get off the couch and you make it happen, you can have all the marbles. We're going to take another break, and when we come back with Pete, we're going to switch gears to talk about marketing, and then my favorite subject, courage. Here's another important message from another great sponsor on David versus Goliath. We'll be right back.
Do you own a business? Do you have or need a social media presence? If you are like most businesses, you spend either no time or too much time and money on your social media strategy, spending thousands of dollars per month only to get mediocre and inconsistent results. This leads to frustration and, in some cases, sleepless nights. Introducing AutomateMySocial.com. Automate 90% of your social media and never have to think about it again. That's right. Automate your business's social media posting and strategy like forever. Automate the essentials and customize only what's needed. Save time, save money, and get better results with AutomateMySocial.com. Our patent-pending technology gives you the ability to automatically create your social post and distribute them immediately, like in seconds, across all your social media platforms. Stop the madness of paying someone to create, post, and manage your strategy, and let our software do the work, so you don't have to. Oh, and if you're an agency or social media manager, you too can let our software do all the work, and you can get all the credit. It will be our little secret. With AutomateMySocial.com, you can have it all. It's easy to use, never complains, and never asks for time off or more benefits. See this amazing new software application at AutomateMySocial.com. If you own a business or manage client social media and want to save time, energy, money, all while increasing your return on investment, then let's get this party started at AutomateMySocial.com.
For our final segment with Pete, Tillack, and Adam DeGraide. We're learning a lot about drawing on napkins today and what it means, the value of getting out and going for something. So one of the things I wanted to ask you is marketing. You mentioned that it was a huge success for you. Tell the listeners a little bit about your marketing strategy.
Things change rapidly. At the very beginning, it was a lot easier. So that was, I want to say, 15 years ago or more. It was actually early 2000s. It was pretty simple, TV and paper. Being an artist, or I didn't really know the idea of an artist or what I should do. I thought I had to be in this box. sitting in the corner and being quiet. But before that happened, before those ideals happened, I just went into it like it was an electrical business. And so I started contacting everybody to create this show where I found galleries didn't want to represent me because I was brand new. I thought the show was where I was going to make all my money. So I ended up contacting a newsagents, got on the TV, gave away a surfboard, got all these newspapers to put articles, and I wrote the articles and got them put into the papers and so forth. I did the show, and as I said earlier, I promised myself if I could sell a piece, then I would stay. If not, I go back home. And I was actually broke. My mate lent me money. At the show, which was just in a park because I couldn't get any representation, I didn't sell a thing. But so I'm like, okay, hey, not heartbroken. I'm going to win either way. I'm going to go home and surf. I got it. Now I just got to figure out how I'm going to get myself back there. When all of a sudden the phone started ringing and a company had seen me on the news and in the papers and asked if I did murals. And from that, just kept building. Amazing. So that was the beginning of the marketing. Then I started doing outdoor shows, building content for my website, putting myself out as much as I can wherever anybody would accept because I was unknown, and quickly learned where I wanted to be, and constantly asking questions to people who were already at positions that I wanted to be at.
Sure.
So there was one girl, heads out to Jen, thank you very much. I walked up to her and said, hey, I think you're successful. You look very successful. How did you get here? Can you give me any ideas and hints? And she lent me the gift of this book by a guy named Jack White, not from the White Stripes, but the White Stripes got their name from this guy, which is funny.
That's funny.
And he was a construction guy, like I saw the ridiculous price of something in a gallery, said I could paint that and sell it. So he did. He couldn't sell it, but he used the techniques of knocking on the doors, getting in the galleries. So I started doing that and reaching out to galleries that my friends were in because they already gave me the information that I knew. Now, there's many ways to be an artist. I chose the gallery and shows. And so I would contact galleries that I'd gotten good word from other fellow artists, whether they worked for them or not. And then the second thing is just because you give them their artwork doesn't mean it's going to sell. You have to be present. So I constantly rang them, said, hey, let's do shows. When I do a show, they got to know me. They got to know my art. I got to know the business. I got to understand how sales worked. My techniques actually came from two of my favorite people who showed me their technique of selling art. And it's hard to be creative and be business at the same time because I feel they undermine each other, but they don't, because this is my life. And as I said, I don't sell the work, I connect it.
That's a really important point that you just said right there. I want to stop for a second because we do have creatives right now that listen and watch the show, and they have business in them and they don't know what to do. And you don't have a choice. Business and your art are not at war with each other. They're at harmony with each other because one can't exist without the other. And I think that is the very important point. I know a lot of artists, Pete, that are singers, musicians that don't even show their music to the world.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of painters that paint. And my son, for example, he's 7 years old. He's so cute. He draws a picture, and if he makes one little mistake, I see him crumbling up and getting frustrated with himself. I'm like, Anthem. 99% of the greatest art in the world has mistakes in it. You just don't know it.
Yeah.
And I said, you could take that mistake and shape it. It becomes beautiful. And it's no longer a mistake. It becomes part of the piece of art. And so it's just like businessman. You can't do your art for your life unless you figure out how to do business with your art. And that's a really, really good point. So keep going.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. I actually constantly questioning, constantly learning. Another one of my collectors, I have grown my collection base, so I have people from all over the place. And another good note that I got from one of my collectors was we became good friends, and he said anytime he walked into the business, he's a salesman, but he taught people how to sell. And he said, anytime I walked into a business and they were empty, they didn't have customers in there, those people better be on the phone contacting the people that they've had prior conversations with who are interested. You don't blow off those people who are interested. And so I thought about how I could use that. Anybody who's interested in my work, and I understand that there's something they would like, but not necessarily now. I get their information, I make notes, I follow up with them, and I always have a database of those people letting them know what's going on. That's awesome. It has grown my business. The gallery / artist combination is a tough one for some people. I've got a few galleries that represent me. Heads out. Can I name it?
Oh, of course. Please. Absolutely.
Perfect. Gallery 1870 in Napa. Savannah is Savignon Gallery, and Gallery of Modern Masters in Sedona. I work with those guys, but I just don't have my art in there. I actually work with those guys. So anytime somebody contacts them with information, they allow me to be on the email so that I can follow up with them on behalf of both the gallery and myself.
That's how we did it. That's how we did it. You did a small customization for me because, one of the things I've always said in life, and I actually have a poster of me like the day I got married to my wife, just staring out at the ocean. And it says, anything truly great and worthwhile starts with one word, and that's believe. And so I said, hey, I know this is all the marbles, but could we get believe in there? And I love where you put it. You put it on the jar.
Yes.
The jar is where you put it. And it was really
the jar
special.
of all the marbles.
The jar of all the marbles, because you can't get them if you don't believe. And as you can tell, there's obviously something going on back here. There's like a little siren firing up in the back. Hopefully everyone's okay.
I think they're actually after my artwork. It's a rush.
Man, one of the things I love to talk about is courage on the David versus Goliath. That shepherd boy was kind of crazy, right? He said, I'm going to go defeat that Philistine. I can do it. Saul's like, are you sure you don't want my armor? He's like, I got my 5 smooth stones. I know that God's with me. And he walked out in that field, 1 stone. He had 5, but only took 1 stone to slay that giant. And that was a stone I like to call courage. A lot of people listening to this that haven't stepped out, or even have, and they haven't made that next step in their business because of fear. They need courage. What was it for you, Pete, that gave you that ability to get out and to see the world, but also more importantly, the courage to start your own business and then to stick with it?
A seed. I felt that working for someone wasn't necessarily what I felt like I wanted to do. At 18, hence why I took a business course to open up a business. Didn't know where I was going. I hadn't even made the steps except for I'd made all the money prior to it. So I guess I was that lion. Now that we're talking about it, I guess I was that lion just ready to jump. Then being in the art field, as I explained when I traveled, it was not expecting to do that. So I just fell into it, which happens with a lot of people, but it's constantly going. And when you realize that, hey, I can do this, it makes it a lot easier. It's like waves, The hardest thing about surfing is not getting up. It's actually getting through those waves. And those smaller waves are the problems at the beginning, are the ones that kick your butt at the very beginning. But at the very end, you're actually surfing all your troubles and your problems. They're the bigger waves. And you look on the inside laughing at the small problems that you used to worry about.
Yeah, totally.
And you'll build that. We learn. But discipline and consistency is one of the biggest things. You see what I've got behind me is my studio. I live upstairs. Everything started off in a small room. I used to think that I needed this big, glorious studio, but you make do with what you've got. Even Amazon, if you've ever seen the beginnings of Amazon, it was a graffitied sign in a little office that he built. Yeah. So nobody starts off at the top. We all start off from constantly working from it. And it's not made for everybody. There's a lot of people who don't wish to move forward, but I'm gathering people who are watching your show are those ones. Mm-hmm. Right?
What advice do you have for them, Pete? They're on that precipice right now of going back to where they came from or moving forward to what they're called to do. What advice do you give them?
Look at how other people have done it. Research. I constantly question how and why I do it, and I'm constantly questioning how I can get to the next level. I've reached levels that I wanted to reach. Now I get to the next level because we're never satisfied. Yeah, no one buys that big house and said, hey, I'm good. No, they keep going to the next level of whatever it may be.
My house can never get big enough.
That's an interesting thing, and I'm glad to be in that opportunity to be able to pull that off. But I had a list of people that I looked at who were doing what I wanted to do, and I still have it in the back there. And I wrote it down. And I've hit a lot of those marks. Some of them I won't ever do that because that's not my style of work. But I'm like, okay, well, why did this person become successful? So success leaves, I use a lot of motivational speeches and so forth that other people have used because they're great. Success leaves a trail. So if you can figure out what it is for you, art isn't necessarily.
Hey, that would be a cool piece of art. Success leaves a trail.
Yeah, well, I can actually see it.
Hey, there's some inspiration right there.
Could it be crumbs? Is it what was the one Hansel and Gretel?
It could be, you know what it could be? It could be the notes crumpled up.
Yeah, smaller notes to bigger notes, because you're going to have more problems as you get older, but or as you get further into the business.
And one of the things about that, by the way, one of the things about that story, I've talked about it before, is that there's moments in life where you need to put a boulder down, right? And you don't want to be like Hansel and Gretel, where you leave the breadcrumbs and the animals come and take it. So what I would say is, when something positive happens in your business or in your personal life, put a rock in your mind, because as you go along and you lose your way, you can always get back to that rock. If you leave things that are perishable behind in your memories and in your successes, or even in your failures, and you don't learn from it, somebody can come and steal them and you forget, and next thing you know, you're lost. You don't know where to go. But if we go along in success and we have different size things leading to a giant stone, that moment in your life, even if you fail in the future, you can go back and start from there. And it's a pretty cool idea. Look at this. We're creating art right now here on the David versus Goliath podcast. And Pete, I think my problem with creatives, I could literally talk to you guys all day long because I love it. I love musicians. I love artists. I love musicians and artists and people who take their art and find out business in it. And that's what you did. How can people find you online?
Okay, so it's PeteTillack.com. That's PETETILLACK.com. You've got Gallery 1870 in Napa. You've got they've got an online website, Savannah Savignon Gallery. They've got the online website, and Gallery Modern Masters also has an online website. Plus, I do a large show in Scottsdale, which is for 3 months, where I actually live out there. And that is the
when do you do that? Because I'm in Scottsdale. One of my favorite museums in the world is in Scottsdale. It's the Museum of Musical Instruments. Yeah,
it's not far from there, actually. So we're the 101. It's the 101 and Hayden.
When do you do that? When do you do that?
From about the middle of March to the middle of January to the end of March. It's a 10-week show. There's about 100 artists.
You got to remind me. I'm going to come.
Yes. Well, you'll get an email. So you're on my contact list. Remember what I told you? Thank you very much.
I better be on your contact list.
Yes. You're in my collectors section, my friend. Very special. You get all my good emails.
Yeah, I'm in a little section in his software called "A Dude with Some Dispensable Money." Anyway, Pete, this has been so much fun. Have you had fun being on David versus Goliath?
Actually, have, man. I wish we had more time.
It's already like a 50-minute episode. It has been awesome having you on it. It's Pete Tillack. You can check him out at PeteTillack.com. I'm Adam DeGraide, your host of David versus Goliath. And once again, a special shout out to AutomateMySocial.com, which is the newest sponsor here on the David versus Goliath podcast. Makes it possible, along with our great other sponsors, Anthem Software, and I believe at this point in time, it's ISU Armac. Thank you to all the watchers and listeners. We'll see you next week. Have an awesome day.
At ISU Armac Agency, we want to be your one responsible source for all of your insurance needs. From a rocket engineer in California to several hospitals in Illinois, our personal lines team specializes in hard-to-place risks and high-net-worth clientele. With 2 locations and 20-plus agents, we can write in all 50 states to better serve our clients with needs in multiple states. Family-owned and operated since 1962, and 4 generations carrying on the tradition of insurance. Celebrating our 60th year in the industry, we are truly proud of where we have come from and where we are going. With over 300 carriers nationwide, our agency can offer individuals and businesses more choices and better prices. ISU Armac brings a wide variety of solutions to the table. For more information, visit us online at www.isu-armac.com.